Y'all better keep your eyes on number 22 when training camp starts. That's Jarrian Jones. I'll tell you why. Just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right. It is Locked On Jaguars, and it is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. I am the host, Tony Wiggins, and you can find us over on our YouTube page at Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you go over, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and then hit that bell so you receive notifications each and every time we drop an episode. Also, whenever you listen to audio podcasts, when and wherever you do that, make sure you tap into that location every single day so you do not miss an episode of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Shout out to the everydayers for joining us here on Locked On Jaguars. You can be an everydayer. All you got to do is join us every single day. And when you see me in public, say, hey, T-Wig, what's up, man? I'm an everydayer. Tell me your name, and I'll make sure we mention it on the pod. All right, let's get down to it. I have spent so much time talking about finding gems, and not just in the first or second round. I said on round 3, round 4, and round 5. To the Jaguars' credit, they did find some depth in Tyler Lacy. They did apparently find a starter last year in Antonio Johnson, okay? Moving forward, as much as I give them crap about guys that they picked that aren't turning out, I also talked about them changing their profile. So I'm going to tell you what we're going to do here today. We're going to talk about players, certain players that can help and what their impact is going to be. And we're going to talk about Jarrian Jones, the cornerback. By segment 3, we'll mention his special teams impact to go along with the fact that he's a long and a short-term potential starter. So many times those special teams spots in the past, or those draft picks, those draft positions in the past were used to just get guys that'll just be good special teams and that only. And I don't think that's the case with him. More slot and outside depth. For the first time in a while, the Jaguars didn't just take the approach that they were going to get one guy to fill a need that people have been talking about forever. They signed a free agent, and then they drafted somebody else, and then they drafted another guy. So the Jaguars didn't just try to fill a square by cherry picking one player. Jones is a part of that, and we'll mention the rest of that also. But the Jarrian Jones impact is where we're going to start. We're not going to bury the lead, and we're going to get right to it. I like the pick. Now, I'm going to be very, very transparent. I'm going to be overly transparent. I watch Florida State football every single snap that they take all year. I don't care if they're playing a Division IV school that doesn't exist. I will watch Florida State. I watched Jarrian Jones for the last 3 years at FSU. For the most part of a year and 3 quarters, I was upset at Jarrian Jones. I'm not going to lie to you. I was so angry. I used to be like, man, why is 7 on my field? Get 7 off my field. Fortunately for me, I got boots on the ground. I got people like CJ Wilson, and I have people like my friend James Coleman, who is an alumni. Shout out to 3-6. And they used to drop a little info on me and tell me, no, he's not healthy, man. He's just banged up. You just got to get healthy. Just got to get healthy. I'm telling you, he's out there. He's out there trying to help the team. He's playing hurt. So they weren't the only people. And I don't even know if one of them told me that, but I know they were rooting for him too, right? But there were people that were saying you got to give him a chance. Once the Florida State University changed their philosophy, and this is big, and this is why sometimes when you watch tape and watch film without knowing what the players were asked to do, it's hard to really understand whether or not they're not doing it because they weren't asked to do it, they weren't taught, or it wasn't emphasized, or if it's just a simple, well, maybe they didn't ask them to do it because they can't do it, right? Patrick Surtain Sr., everyone knows his son Junior is like one of the top 3 corners in the league, maybe even the top corner in the league. But he also had a long career where he made multiple Pro Bowls, all right, for the Miami Dolphins. Good football player. Accomplished high school coach. Coached his son. And coached Tyson Campbell. I believe he coached Tyson Campbell, and I think he coached Tyreek Stevenson, if I'm not mistaken. If he didn't coach them all, he was in the vicinity, and they were getting coached up through 7-on-7 and all of this stuff. But I do think they all went there. And The one thing that I can tell you is he changed immediately with them, and that is he made them play the ball more. Coach Woodson, who was there before Patrick, and I think Coach Woodson is at Arkansas now if he's still there. Good technician, taught guys how to tackle, keep everything in front of them, but they did not take chances and try to get turnovers. They weren't really, really aggressive. The thing that Surtain did when he came in, he did it with Ronaldo Green, he did it with Jarrian Jones, he did it with all of the players, even players that are. They became super, super aggressive. They became very pro-like in their approach. They emphasize length. They emphasize playing the ball. And over the course of the last couple of seasons, you've seen a big difference in those players, a huge difference in those players. There are a lot of guys that are going to be running around on Sundays that a couple of years ago, people that were at Florida State that people didn't think were going to be running around on Sundays, like Ronaldo Green I heard he's tearing up camp, with this opportunity that he's been given. Jarvis Brownlee looks good, even though he ended up at Louisville and trained those last 2 years at Louisville. He was another player that was with Florida State. Akeem Dent, I believe, is going to really, really show up and show off in the league this year. And it's just, to me, a change of coach, a change of philosophy, renewed confidence. All of a sudden, you saw Jarrian Jones, Ronaldo Green, those guys that you heard me talking about in the pre-draft process. You saw them change and morph into NFL-type players to match their 4-star high school ratings, right? So Jarrian Jones ended up being like one of the team leaders for the Seminoles, and he was probably, in my opinion, even though Ronaldo Green was very good, Jones was very, very consistent. That's why Florida State won so many games. That's why people thought they should have been in the playoffs, because you go back and you had Jarrett Verse and you had Braden Fisk and you had Kalen DeLoach and all of those leaders and guys just running around, and they fit well. So they fit really, really good so well. And Jarrian Jones is a big part of it. And what I like about him is he's tailor-made for this particular defense with this scheme and this coaching staff. And so far in OTAs, he has lived up to all of that. So far in OTAs, he has looked the part. He feels a lot of people think that this kid is like a day one player in the starting lineup. And the reason why they feel that way, in my opinion, is because they haven't seen a bunch of people body type wise, attitude wise, to be this ready for what they're going to do from day one when they walked into the National Football League. In fact, I was afraid that they were going to miss out on Jarrian Jones when they decided to go defensive tackle with Mason Smith in the second round. I was afraid the Jaguars were going to miss out on drafting Jarrian Jones. It was either him or Ronaldo Green, and I think in one or two of the drafts, I had them both. So I wanted to be transparent with you guys, because most people that follow this podcast know that I am a Florida State fan. One thing I've never, ever done, because anybody asked me about Johnny Wilson, I said, nah, he ain't my favorite. He was very, very productive. I never root for guys. I want them all to play well. But if I didn't like the team they played for in college, when they get to the NFL, I don't care. And vice versa. When a guy from Florida State, good for the program, maybe it helps recruiting, but I'm talking about, I am not one of those dudes. I'm too old. I'm almost 55 years old. In fact, I'll be that in about a few weeks. I am not going to sit here and root against NFL guys just because they played at a college that I didn't like. I'm just too grown for that. So, and I'm not going to overly root for guys in the NFL that did play for a college that I rooted for. And Jarrian Jones is not getting the treatment here. I'm going to tell you exactly what it is that I like about him and how I think it bodes well for the Jaguars now and in the future. And I'm going to talk about where I believe he plays best. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. I want to let you know about Gametime first, man. Gametime is the absolute truth. If you are looking for tickets to sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, theater, whatever it is, make sure you tap into Gametime. Now, if payday hasn't come yet and you don't know if you're going to have time off, don't worry about it, because here's the thing. It is a priority for last-minute deals at Gametime. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, or theater, or etc. And then if you need to make sure that, if you're going to buy your tickets early, but you don't know what your work schedule is, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry with Gametime ticket coverage. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code. And here, I want you to spell this out, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed. All right, segment number 2 here on Locked On Jaguars. We're at your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Glad I just have the opportunity to sit here and talk about new talent that we haven't seen yet, other than seeing guys run around in shorts. So we're going to make sure we temper a little bit our enthusiasm, but you get, I give so much grief when the Jaguars do something wrong, then I have to give a little bit of praise when I think they've done something correctly. So far, so good in terms of body type, fit, what you want from a coaching staff to what you want from a player. Everything I know about Jarrian Jones is secondhand, and everything I know about Ryan Nielsen is secondhand. In fact, I haven't actually been in a building when he's spoken, but I've heard, and I've talked to a lot of people who were in the building every time he spoke. One time I was on vacation and he spoke, and you can almost tell when a coach and a player, when the skill set of the player matches the desires and the thing that the coach really, really leads with. Aggression, downhill, keep everything in front of you. Jarrian Jones is about 6'1.5", not the longest arms in the world, but he is about 190 pounds, which means he's physical. He can run. He has good lateral quickness. And the thing that I really, really like about him is he loves the game. Remember, I use this phrase sometimes called football playing Jesse. That's just somebody that just eats, sleeps, and drinks the process. Football. They almost believe that practice is where they're earning their money, because they want to get to the work, and they love the process of getting better. They love the process of just getting to the work and doing football activities and competition. That's exactly who he is. And that's why I say I love this pick for this team. Not only that, I just believe that the Jaguars over the years have failed to properly give priority to certain positions. We have been screaming about a nickel here for a long time. That's why everybody wanted them to draft Brian Branch last year in the 2022 draft or the 2023 draft, because they finally wanted that position sewed up and fixed without constantly saying we need this, we need that, or using a stopgap veteran, or trying to find some corner that doesn't play well outside, or just figuring you could just get away with that position without truly addressing it. That changed. That absolutely changed. Also, the Jaguars have used a whole bunch of late round picks trying to find that other developmental corner. I think, that's a good way to go, because there's often a lot of guys like offensive linemen and DBs that can really, really help you, and even sometimes defensive linemen that can really, really help you in those later rounds. But you can't just solely depend on that. Sometimes you have to go ahead and address the fact that you can use early picks on these guys too. And I know they have Tyson Campbell and they have Andre Cisco, but for the most part, historically, and it's not just with this group, outside of Jalen Ramsey and Rasheed Mathis, they ain't used a whole bunch of early capital on these positions. Well, the third round pick is pretty early. It's day 2. And I think that the Jaguars did a good job with that, with Jarrian, considering that they also signed Darnell Savage, who is going to play the slot or the safety role. I look at it in a nickel. They're going to be in nickel. If they're in nickel, I anticipate you're going to see Ronald Darby on one side, Tyson Campbell on the other, Savage lined up in the slot, and obviously Cisco and Antonio Johnson behind. But when they go to dime, that's where I think you'll see more Jarrian Jones lined up in the slot, maybe even some outside, and then you let Savage kind of roam into the middle of the field a little bit. And I just want to give them some credit for double dipping and really, really saying we're not just going to put this on one evaluation. We're not going to put this on just, okay, we got that position good, let's just move on to something else. The Jaguars have done a really, really good job of doubling down. They did it at defensive tackle too. They're just not just going to sit there and just take one guy and just think that their evaluation of that position. No, they created competition. They had the draft picks and they did it. And I am one appreciative, but also like the body type. I love marrying the body type with the scheme. DeAndre Prince is another young man that the Jaguars went out and got, who's going to challenge and play some in the defensive backfield. So that's why I'm really, really happy with what they did. Prince even has a 4.38 40. I like him. I absolutely like the young man. I like the attitude that they're going to go get guys that played that play big time ball in big time conferences, that have a certain skill set, that are built and yoked a certain way, that approach the game a certain way. So they're not resting on their laurels. They're not sitting here saying it's just one. We just wanted to add one guy and then just hoping that one guy turns out. No, they loaded up at the position, and here's why that's critical. Because when we talk about now, we talk about the future, we talk about salary cap and maybe guys who may or may not re-sign, and where's Ronald Darby and how much does he have left? Well, when you start using higher draft picks on these players, then it gives you a little bit more wiggle room to, if you have to move away from something, you can move away from something. Yeah, Prince is also 6 feet, about 183 pounds. For a while, it seemed like the Jaguars were stuck on these 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", compact built dudes. And now they're going more for speed and guys who can play man to man. They're actually adopting the traits factor into the secondary. This kid's going to play special teams also. When you start getting good as a team, you start getting good as a team when some of your better players or some of the guys that you think the team may have drafted to be a starter. No, when you hear the coach, like we heard the special teams talk yesterday, that Jarrian Jones is a lights out special teams player. You know why they say that without even seeing him really play? It's because they know what he's built, how he's built. They know how he's yoked. I'm giving kudos to the Jaguars, and I'm telling you, Jarrian Jones is one of those dudes that are really, really, really going to push a lot of people. He's going to be a dude that's on a 53-man roster, but he's also going to play special teams, which might make it really, really difficult for guys who just want to use special teams as a way to get on the team until they prove themselves. So we'll have more on that. We're going to talk about the impact of competition that it does on special teams, and then the long and short-term ability, what he can do this year for the Jaguars, and then what he can possibly do for the future for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to let you know about all that after I tell you about if you're tired of watching Fox Sports or ESPN all day on your TV and you have to turn down the volume with all the yelling and screaming, then make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, getting right back to it. We're going to talk about the impact long and short term of Jarrian Jones on this team. We'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. But first, I have to let you know about today's sponsor, which is BetterHelp. Therapy is extremely important to me and some of the members of my family, and it could work with you also. If you're sometimes afraid to go sit down in front of people, well, guess what? BetterHelp, you can do it all over the phone, all online, and it's very, very easy to do. And if you're considering therapy, I'm telling you, it absolutely works. Whether it's death in the family, time management can cause a lot of stress, or just dealing with traumas that you never have had the courage to deal with, BetterHelp can make you really, really comfortable and have a therapist, a licensed therapist that can talk to you anytime you want. And you can even switch therapists if you feel you have to. So if you think about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try and visit betterhelp.com/lockedon, and you can get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Death in the family, time management, trying to figure out how to spend all of your time with your loved ones that you should. BetterHelp can help you. Make sure if you're considering therapy, you give BetterHelp a try. Third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars. We're at your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. We're talking about the Jarrian Jones impact, why it's such a good fit, a little bit of the background with his college history, where he played really, really well the last year under a scheme change, and once he was absolutely able to get healthy. The thing about that I want to park on for 1 minute is the NFL is always full of ups and downs. You wonder who can maintain their mental integrity and not get broken by this process, because sometimes guys come in and they hit a wall and they get broken. One of the things that can help you with that is if someone has been through adversity before. And we saw Jarrian Jones, I did at Florida State, up and down, wasn't a fan favorite and all of that stuff once he came in as a transfer, but he persevered and he hung out. And if you follow Florida State football, you know they have flipped the script. He was a huge part of that flip, that script getting flipped. He was a huge part of that. And he might be the poster child from going from one thing to the other. Perseverance. He didn't let it break him. He didn't quit. He didn't mentally check out. He stuck in there. He hung in there. And he ended up leaving Florida State as one of the people. You tell them to name their 10 favorite guys, maybe not the best players, but their 10 favorite guys, at least over the last 5-10 years. Jarrian Jones is one of them, because he did every single thing he was supposed to do to help Florida State come out of that hole. And there's a similar thing going on here, where the Jaguars are no longer in the doldrum, or in the dungeon, if you will, of the National Football League. But they're trying to make that next step after making all of those big steps. Well, these steps now are a little more difficult. To stop being a 9-win team and start trying to be an 11, 12, 13-win team, that is almost more difficult than it is to go from being a 2-win team up to a 9-win team, if you can follow me. So what you're going to need is you're going to need dudes that are built a certain way with certain fortitudes. And Jarrian Jones is that. And so far, people that may not know that backstory have raved about how he's looked and how he's approached minicamp. And there's not a lot you can tell from a physical standpoint when guys aren't in pads. Like, that's another whole level of, are the pads going to break him? Because we talk about that every single year during training camp. These guys, all of a sudden, I call the pads a lie detector. They come out. We called them Tods when I was little. You pull the Tods out and the lie detector comes on. You can tell who's real and who ain't. Anybody can, run around and play football and get some real estate when you don't have to pay a toll for it. But when that toll becomes physicality and misdirection and not being in the right place, you want guys that bought in, and you want guys that buy in before that happens. You want proactive buy-inners. Is that a word or a phrase? But that's exactly what he is. He's a go-getter from his, when they say from getting off the bus, no, he might have pushed the bus to the stadium. That's just how he is. And that's just how he plays. And it sounds a lot like, if I describe that as a coach, I'm describing Ryan Nielsen. Kudos to Trent Baalke for matching players and scheme so you can get the best possible result. He's going to play special teams. That's going to keep some fringe special teams dude that ain't ready to be a player from the line of scrimmage, but that's taking up a roster spot because he earned it on special teams. You don't want your starters to get tired, or you don't want your starters using all of this energy. No. That guy's going to have to show way more now, because now this is the dude that's pushing for a starting spot, pushing for a future spot on this team, who's going to play special teams from the very, very beginning, and he's very, very good at it. Very, very good at it. At least on the college level he was. And you think he'd be good at it because of his physicality, his makeup. He's a real, real good tackler too. He is a sure tackler. He ain't going to quit on plays. All of the adjectives, when you say that, now there's going to be somebody that say, I'm going to see a post on one of the social medias that say, watch out now. Wiggs talking about Jarrian Jones like he's going to be a superstar. That's not what I said. There are a lot of very, very good football players who are never superstars, but they play 10 years. I'll name one, Brad Meester. You just need guys that are professionals, that love the game, that aren't weaknesses, that they can be a plus. And I'm not even saying the kid won't be a superstar, because you just never know. There are a lot of third-round picks that turn out to be very, very good players. So if there's a comp, who does it remind me of? He reminds me of L'Jarius Sneed. That's who he reminds me of with his attitude. That's exactly who he reminds me of with the way that he plays. And y'all know I was big on L'Jarius Sneed. I was like, go get him at all costs. And then he ended up going to one of our rivals here in the division, but that's okay. I was big on go get him. But they've decided, you know what we're going to do? We're going to draft our own people. And I can't even be mad at it. So the special teams is immediate. The short term is he can play in a pinch. He's going to be prepared. He can physically match up with folks. He's a sure tackler. I'm not calling him Jalen Ramsey. That's a whole nother level of whatever. I'm just saying. This kid is a good football player. He was a 4-star recruit out of high school, went to Mississippi State, left, transferred to Florida State, got banged up and was caught up when Florida State was really, really trying to turn it around, and they turned it around, and he was a huge, huge part of it. That's the kind of DNA I want injected into this football team, and I'm glad the Jaguars have him, and you should be too. Number 22. I wore that number in basketball in high school, so it's easy for me to remember that. Long term, maybe he's your future nickel, or maybe he's even a starter outside and you get to save a bunch of money because somebody wants too much money. I'm not saying it's Tyson Campbell, but just in case it is. Or Ronald Darby, he's had some injuries in the past, not really lately, but he's a little bit older, but I think he's a good player. He reminds me of Darby too. He's that kind of a guy. Not too big, not too small, but size ain't a problem, but he can do everything. He can jam, he can tackle, he can do whatever you ask him to do. He's going to stick his nose in, he's going to mix it up. And I think the Jaguars have been needing a whole bunch of people who are willing to stick their nose in and mix things up. You can mix things up, too, by checking out Locked On Sports Today, the 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's now available on the Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. You guys hang tough. We're going to keep giving you the information and keep doing some of these player profiles and how some of these cats can help the Jaguars, help the big cats as they get ready to play this season. Until the next episode, which will be on tomorrow, you guys take care of each other, and I'll do the same thing too.